Book 1. Debts and Lessons. Before Marcus sets down a single rule for himself, he writes a list of names. The opening book of the Meditations is not philosophy at all but gratitude, a careful inventory of everyone who shaped him, and the exact virtue each one taught. From his grandfather Verus, he says, he learned good character and the control of his own temper. From his mother, reverence for the divine, generosity, and a plain way of living with nothing of the rich about it. A tutor named Diognetus taught him to ignore the quacks and the miracle sellers, to hear unwelcome truths, and to sleep on a hard camp bed in the Greek style. From Rusticus came the hardest gift of all, the recognition that his own character needed training, together with a borrowed copy of the lectures of Epictetus, the slave who became philosophy's great teacher. Apollonius showed him how to stay the same steady man through pain, through illness, even through the loss of a child. Sextus showed him how to be free of passion and yet full of love. From the courtier Fronto, he learned to recognize the malice and cunning that power breeds, even among the well-born. Through his brother Severus he came to imagine a free society, a community of equal laws, governed by equal rights and free speech. Maximus taught him self-control, cheerfulness in adversity, and the saving grace of a sense of humor. And then, at far greater length than anyone, his adopted father, the Emperor Antoninus. A man of relentless hard work and very few wants, indifferent to honors, free of superstition and of all the cheap theater of power. He could carry a migraine through a long day and return to his work fresh. He guarded the public treasury like a careful private man, and he took the blame for things himself rather than pass it down. He held the highest office on earth and lived almost like an ordinary person. He knew, Marcus writes, as people said of Socrates, how to enjoy the things most men cannot resist, and to go without the things most men cannot give up. The book ends with thanks to the gods, for good parents and teachers and friends, for a body that somehow held out, for the fact that whenever passion did seize him he recovered before it could do real harm, and even for the remedies that came to him in dreams when he was coughing blood. It is a strange way to open a private notebook, and a revealing one. Marcus does not picture himself as self-made. He sees a self assembled slowly, piece by piece, out of the living examples he chose to watch closely. Before he asks what kind of man he ought to become, he records with real precision the people who already showed him. Read straight through, the catalogue is really a self-portrait in negative. The man he hoped to become, assembled out of other people, each one owed a specific and unforgettable debt. He keeps almost no credit for himself. Even his virtues, he insists, were first borrowed and only then made his own. Virtue here is never an abstract theory. It is something you catch from the people you admire, if you are paying attention. Book 2. On the River Gran, among the Quadi. The heading is a place, a military camp on the northern frontier, where Marcus is fighting a long war and writing only for himself. The most famous passage comes first. When you wake in the morning, he tells himself, say this in advance. Today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, and jealous. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil. But I have seen what good looks like and what evil looks like, and I know that the man who wrongs me shares my own mind and a portion of the divine. So he cannot really harm me. No one can drag me down into ugliness. And I cannot be angry with someone who is my own kin. We were made, he writes, to work together like the hands, the feet, the eyelids, the upper and lower rows of teeth. To obstruct one another is against nature, and anger is exactly that kind of obstruction. He warns himself against the opposite trap as well, forever prying into other people's souls while leaving his own unwatched. The soul that sulks at whatever happens, he says, makes itself a kind of abscess on the world, a growth that has seceded from nature. From there the book keeps circling one fact. There is very little time. Stop letting your mind be jerked around, he says. You are an old man now. Concentrate every minute on the task in front of you, like a Roman and a man, with honesty and justice, as if it were the last thing you would ever do. He reminds himself that he could leave life at this very moment, and that this thought should govern everything he says and does. And he attacks our fear of death with cold logic. The longest life and the shortest come to exactly the same end, because the only thing anyone can lose is the present moment. You cannot lose the past, which is already gone, or the future, which you do not yet hold. A man who lives 3,000 years and a man who dies tomorrow give up the identical thing. Now, he sums up the human condition without flinching. The body is a river, always flowing away. Fame is oblivion. Life is warfare and a journey far from home. And then the question that the whole book has been building toward. He asks what, in all of this, can actually guide a person. His answer is a single word. Philosophy. Not as decoration, and not as clever argument, but as the one thing that keeps the core of you safe. Superior to pleasure and pain, honest in everything, accepting whatever happens as coming from the same source you came from, and meeting death itself with a calm spirit, as nothing worse than the elements quietly changing back into one another. Book 3. In Carnuntum. Another frontier town, another year of war. Marcus opens this book with a warning that has nothing to do with dying young. We should hurry, he says, not only because each day carries us closer to death, but because something else may go first. The mind itself. Live long enough and the body keeps breathing, eating, going through its motions, while the power to understand the world, to grasp our duty, to read what is in front of us, quietly slips away. So the time to do the inner work is now, while the instrument still works. Then comes one of the most beautiful passages he ever wrote. A defense of finding beauty in things that were never meant to be beautiful. Loaves of bread split open on top in the oven, and the cracks, mere accidents of baking, somehow please us. Figs burst when they are ripe. Olives on the point of falling have a loveliness in their very decay. The brow of a lion, the foam on the mouth of a wild boar. Taken alone, none of it is lovely, yet anyone truly at home in nature feels the charm of it. The lesson is to look at the whole, including the parts that seem like flaws. He sets death in the same wide frame. Hippocrates cured countless patients and then fell ill and died. Alexander, Pompey, and Caesar leveled whole cities and then departed life themselves. Heraclitus, who taught that the world would end in fire, died of a disease that left him caked in filth. Socrates was killed by his fellow men. They boarded, they sailed, they made the passage, and then it was simply time to step ashore. Against all of this, Marcus draws his guidance inward. Do only what is yours to do. Keep your thoughts so clean that if someone asked you, with no warning, what you were thinking, you could answer at once without shame. For we carry our fate with us, and it carries us. Trace every impression to its outline, name the thing for what it really is, and ask what quality it calls for from you: patience, courage, honesty. And keep your philosophy as ready to hand as a surgeon keeps his instruments, sharp and waiting for the emergency. The book ends on his sharpest command to himself. Stop drifting. You are not going to reread your old notebooks in some peaceful retirement that will never come. Sprint for the finish line. Be your own rescuer while you still can. Book 4. The Retreat Within. People are forever trying to get away from it all, to the countryside, the coast, the mountains. Marcus catches himself longing for the same thing, and then calls it foolish because the only retreat worth having is always available. You can go within. Nowhere, he writes, is more peaceful or more free of interruption than your own soul. An instant's turning inward, and there it is, complete calm. So take that retreat constantly, but keep it brief and come back ready to face the world again. This is the heart of Book 4. That disturbance never comes from things themselves. Things stand still, outside the mind, unable to touch it. Every judgment about them is made inside you, and what is made inside you can be unmade. The world is nothing but change, he says, and our life is only what we think of it. He turns that single idea over and over. An obstacle is not a wall but fuel. The mind takes what blocks it and burns it like a fire that flares higher on whatever you throw in. Choose not to be harmed, and you will not feel harmed. Do not feel harmed, and you have not been. He prescribes a discipline of subtraction. Most of what we say and do is unnecessary, so at every moment he asks the one question that buys back both time and peace. Is this necessary? Do less, he writes, and do it better. And he keeps puncturing the dream of being remembered. The people who will remember you are themselves about to die, and their memory passes like a flame from hand to hand until it gutters and goes out. Even fame that lasted forever would add nothing real to your life. Praise leaves a beautiful thing exactly as it was. An emerald is no worse if no one admires it. He lets whole generations file past to drive it home. In the age of Vespasian, he writes, people were doing precisely what we do now. Marrying, raising children, falling sick, waging war, throwing parties, scheming and hoping and complaining, and that entire world is nowhere to be found today. The same will soon be true of ours. Underneath everything runs his picture of one connected world. A single living body, one nature, one soul, where every event is woven into the whole and follows from what came before like an unbroken thread. Look at everything as a man would, he says, as a citizen, as a mortal, and keep in mind that whatever you are seeing now will soon change and be gone. Whatever the seasons of nature bring him, he says, falls like ripe fruit. All things come from her, live in her, and return to her. So he meets each day as a mortal among mortals, and meets misfortune with a strange gratitude. It is not unfortunate that this has happened, he tells himself. It is fortunate that, having happened, it has left me unbroken. The thing itself was no misfortune. To endure it and stay whole is great good fortune. He gathers it all into two images at the close. Be the rock that the waves keep crashing over, which stands unmoved while the sea goes still around it. And when the time comes to go, go like an olive that ripens and falls, praising the earth that grew it and thanking the tree that bore it. Book 5. The Work of a Human Being. At dawn, when the bed is warm and the work is cold, Marcus argues with himself about getting up. He asks himself whether he was really made for this, to lie here under the blankets, keeping warm. Look at the bees, the ants, the spiders, the birds, he says, each one already busy at its own task, putting its small part of the world in order. They do not complain. And yet you, who were made for something higher, will not stir to do the work a human being is for. The book treats laziness and self-pity as a failure to love your own nature. From there Marcus builds a whole ethic of action that expects nothing back. Some people, after doing a good turn, are quick to call in the debt. Better to be like the vine, he writes, which produces its grapes and asks for nothing more, bears its fruit and goes on to bear again. Do the good thing and move on, almost without noticing, as a runner finishes the race or a bee makes its honey. He reframes whatever happens to us as a prescription. Just as a doctor orders cold baths or a hard diet, nature has ordered this illness, this loss, this setback, for the sake of your health as a part of the whole, so swallow it like medicine, even when it is bitter because of what it leads to. Then comes the line that thousands of years later would name a whole philosophy of resilience. The mind, he writes, turns every obstacle to its own purposes. What blocks your action becomes your action. The thing standing in your way becomes the way itself. It is the same fire from the book before, now sharpened into a rule for living. He scatters smaller weapons through the pages. Things have no hold on the soul. The soul disturbs only itself. Honor what is highest in you, the fragment of the divine that does your thinking. And when someone offends you, ask first whether the community was really harmed. If not, let it go, and if so, correct the man without anger. He keeps the exit in view as a kind of freedom. You can live here, he says, as well as you would live anywhere else. And if the room ever fills with smoke, you can simply walk out. But until that moment, no one can stop you from being who you mean to be. He closes by redefining the luck everyone chases. I was once a fortunate man, he imagines someone saying, and then my fortune left me. But real good fortune, Marcus answers, is not something that happens to you. It is something you build out of a good character, good intentions, and good actions which no one can ever take away. Book 6. Things as They Really Are. The best revenge, Marcus writes, is not to be like the one who wronged you. It is a single line, and it carries the whole moral center of the book. You answer cruelty not by matching it, but by refusing to be changed by it. Much of Book 6 is about seeing clearly, stripping the glamour off things until you see what they actually are. Roasted meat on the table is a dead fish, a dead bird, a dead pig. A fine vintage is grape juice. The purple robes of high office are sheep's wool dipped in shellfish blood. He trains himself to do this to everything that claims his awe, to pull off the legend that encrusts it and look at the plain thing underneath, because pride deceives us most exactly when we feel busiest and most important. He keeps widening the lens until status disappears. Alexander the Great and the man who drove his mules both died, he notes, and the same thing became of both of them, absorbed back into the world or scattered into atoms. Asia and Europe are far corners of the universe. The whole ocean is a drop. The present is a split second of eternity. And the applause we hunger for is just the clacking of tongues. The remedy is not despair but proportion. He returns again and again to one connected world. Everything woven together, pushing and pulling on everything else, breathing as one. What injures the hive, he writes, injures the bee. Your own good and the common good turn out to be the same thing. We are all working on one project, he adds, whether we know it or not. Even the people who fight it and try to obstruct it are, in spite of themselves, part of how it gets done. Accept your place in that web, he says, and do good to the people in it with real love, not for show. When something knocks you off your rhythm, he says, get back to it as fast as you can. The more often you return to the beat, the better you will keep it. When they wrong you, treat them like a sparring partner in the ring. You keep your guard up and your distance, but you do not hate the man who bruises you. When they are wrong, your job is to teach them, not to rage at them, because no one does wrong on purpose. They are simply chasing what they mistake for good. He hands himself a model to imitate. Antoninus again, his adopted father, his steadiness, his patience under unfair criticism, his refusal of flattery, his calm. Be that, Marcus tells himself, so that when your last hour comes, your conscience is as clear as his. And he distills the inner life into 3 short definitions that still cut. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say and do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions and to nothing else. Book 7. The Task of Being Good. Evil, Marcus says, is the same old thing. Whatever happens to you has filled the history books and the cities and the houses since the beginning. There is nothing new in it, only the familiar wearing a fresh face. That thought is meant to steady him, and from it he builds the book's central resolve. No matter what anyone says or does, my task is to be good. He compares himself to an emerald, or to gold, or to purple, each repeating to itself, whatever happens, I must keep my color, and be what I am. Goodness here is not a reaction to other people. It is a property you simply refuse to surrender. He is gentle in this book about other people's failures. To feel affection for people even when they wrong you is uniquely human, he writes, possible the moment you remember that they act out of ignorance, that you will both soon be dead, and that they have not really harmed you because they cannot touch your power to choose. It is foolish, he adds, to try to escape the faults of others. They are unavoidable. Just work to escape your own. He reaches for height and distance. Look down on human life from above, he says, the way a god might. The herds and armies, the weddings and funerals, the noisy courts and silent deserts, all the foreign peoples, all mixed together into a single shifting pattern. Watch the stars on their courses as if you turned with them, and the mud of life below washes off. And he keeps rehearsing death until it loses its menace. Think of yourself as already dead, he tells himself. You have lived your life. Now take whatever is left and live it rightly. On pain, he borrows a line from Epicurus. Pain is never unbearable and never endless, as long as you remember its limits and refuse to enlarge it in your imagination. Underneath the harshness runs a deep faith in connection. Everything is interwoven, he writes, and the web that binds it is holy. No thread is unrelated to the rest. One world, made of all things. One law shared by all who reason. One truth. And then, near the end, the image that holds the whole book together. Dig down inside yourself, Marcus says. The water goodness is always there, underground, and as long as you keep digging, it will keep bubbling up. Book 8. The Fortress of the Mind. Give yourself a gift, Marcus writes, the present moment. It sounds gentle, almost modern, but it sits on top of the hardest doctrine in the book. That almost nothing outside your own mind is worth your fear. He keeps returning to one mechanism. External things are not the problem, he says. It is your judgment about them that wounds you, and that judgment you can erase right now. Someone has insulted you that you can see, that it has harmed you that you added. Your son is sick that you can see, that he might die of it, that is your imagination running ahead. Stay with the first impression, refuse the extrapolation, and nothing can reach you. From this he builds a place to stand. The mind that withdraws into itself and asks only whether it is acting rightly is, he says, a fortress, and no place is more secure. Once you take refuge there, no insult, no fire, no tyrant can touch you. He pictures the self as a spring of clear water. A man can stand over it and curse it, shovel mud and filth into it, and the spring simply carries the dirt away and keeps bubbling up clean. Be that, he says, not a cistern that holds whatever is poured in, but a source that renews itself. He has a darker image for the cost of cutting yourself off. The person who rebels against what happens or acts only for himself is like a hand or a foot hacked off and lying apart from the body. But here, he says, is our one privilege. Unlike a severed limb, a human being can graft himself back on and rejoin the whole he was made for. And he is ruthlessly practical about complaint. When something seems unbearable, do not picture your whole life crushed under it. Stay with this one moment and ask why exactly you cannot endure it, and you will be ashamed to answer. If the cucumber is bitter, then put it down. If there are brambles across the path, walk around them. That is all you need to know. Do not stand there demanding to know why bitter things and brambles exist in the world at all. Nature, he marvels, wastes nothing. It takes everything broken and used up and quietly makes new things from it, needing no outside supply and no place to throw anything away. Nature, he says, is like someone tossing a ball in the air. The ball gains nothing as it rises and loses nothing when it falls, just as a bubble gains nothing by lasting and loses nothing by bursting. He returns, as always, to other people. We exist for one another, he writes. We can either teach them or put up with them. Their wills are as much their own as their breath, so the harm they intend cannot really reach me. Only one person is harmed by an act of malice, and that is the one who decides to feel harmed, and he can stop deciding at any moment. Book 9. What we owe one another. To wrong another person, Marcus argues, is a kind of blasphemy. Nature made rational beings for one another, to help and not to harm. So whoever transgresses that design sins against the oldest God there is. And he widens the charge in a way that is easy to miss. To lie is blasphemy too, because nature is bound up with truth. And so is chasing pleasure and fleeing pain, because it sets you constantly against the way the world actually is. Then the sharpest turn, you can commit injustice not only by what you do, but by what you fail to do. Doing nothing when something is yours to do is its own kind of wrong. Death runs all through this book, and Marcus keeps refusing to dramatize it. It is one of nature's processes, he says, no stranger than growing up or losing your milk teeth, or the body changing at every stage of life. So wait for it not with contempt and not with longing, but as one more natural thing. He catches himself in a small, precise victory. Today I escaped anxiety, he writes. No, that is wrong, I discarded it because it was inside me all along, in my own perceptions, never out there in the world. He even rewrites how a person should pray. Do not pray for a way to sleep with her, he says, but for the desire to stop. Do not beg for a way to keep your child from dying, but for the strength to lose your fear. Turn your prayers from controlling the world to changing yourself, and watch what happens. He admires Epicurus on his sickbed, who refused to bore his visitors with his symptoms and went on discussing philosophy instead, keeping his mind serene while his body suffered. And the book ends on its most useful advice about other people. When you collide with someone's shamelessness, ask yourself a plain question. Is a world without shameless people even possible? It is not. So stop demanding the impossible. This is simply one of them. Then turn the reproach back on yourself. You were the fool for expecting otherwise, for trusting where you should have known better. And when you have helped someone, do not also hold out your hand to be thanked. Helping is what a human being is for. You do not ask your eyes for a reward for seeing, or your feet for walking. They are doing the very thing they were made to do. So are you. Book 10. A Word to the Soul. The book opens as a quiet plea to his own soul. He asks it a hard question. Will you ever be good, ever be simple, whole, and laid bare to the world, more plainly seen than the body that contains you? He wants the soul to stop its endless wanting, to quit craving people and pleasures, to quit needing more time or an easier place or kinder company, and simply rest content with the present, taking all of it as a gift. It is the diary at its most naked. A man pleading with himself to become what he already knows he should be. From there he lays down a wide acceptance of fate. Whatever happens to you, he writes, was prepared for you from the beginning of time. The threads of cause were spinning your existence and this very event together long before either arrived. A part has no standing to complain about what the whole assigns it. Nature gives and nature takes away, he writes. The only sane reply is to tell her, take and give back as you please, not in defiance but in trust. And he turns that into a daily discipline. Give yourself a short list of words to live up to. Upright, modest, honest, sane, free of self-interest, and if you ever lose them, hurry back. Then comes the line that cuts through all his theorizing, including his own. Stop talking about what a good man is like, he tells himself, and simply be one. He is unsparing about vanity. Fame is a swarm of applauding leaves, he writes, that the wind scatters every autumn while the tree puts out new ones to clap and curse in turn. A healthy mind, he says, should meet whatever comes the way a healthy eye meets light or a strong stomach meets food, without flinching, without demanding that only mild and pleasant things arrive. The mind that keeps whimpering, "Are my children safe? Must everyone approve of me?" is like an eye that can only bear pale colors. He pictures the alternative as something grotesque, clinging to a degraded life the way the wounded fighters in the arena beg to be kept alive one more day, so they can be torn and clawed again tomorrow. Better, he says, to keep just 3 honest options always before you, to go on living, to end it deliberately, or to die having done your duty, and to remember that all of this has played out before, the same court, the same scenes, only the face is different. And he sharpens the cost of resistance into a single picture. To break nature's law is to become a runaway slave, and grief, anger, and fear are exactly that, an attempt to flee what the ruler of all things has decreed. To rage at the world is to desert your post. The whole book asks him, again and again, to come back to one small, sane thing. Do what is in front of you justly, accept what you are given without complaint, and stop performing goodness for an audience that will not outlive the weak. Book 11. Kindness is Invincible. One question opens this book. What can a mind do that nothing else in nature can? Marcus answers with a kind of inventory of the rational soul. It can see itself, examine itself, and make of itself whatever it chooses. Unlike a plant, it gathers in its own harvest. And unlike a dance or a play which is ruined if it stops before the end, a life of the mind is complete at any point you cut it off. At every moment it can say, I have what I came for. Nothing is left unfinished. Much of this book is a workshop on dealing with people who wrong you, and Marcus assembles it into a set of reminders he calls gifts from the muses. Remember that we were made for one another. Remember that people do wrong out of ignorance, and against their own real interest. Remember that you have made plenty of mistakes yourself. Remember how much more harm your anger does to you than the original offense ever did. And remember, above all, that kindness is invincible, if it is genuine, with no sarcasm and no act. He asks what the cruelest person can really do to you if you keep on being kind to him, and gently, at the very moment he tries to harm you, show him a better way. There is nothing manly about rage, he writes. It is gentleness and courtesy that are truly human and truly strong. The angry man is the weak one, surrendering to something he suffers. He also turns to the theater to teach acceptance. Tragedy exists to remind us that painful things happen, and happen to everyone, so that what makes you weep on the stage will not shock you when it arrives in your own life. He gathers in lines from the poets and the philosophers, and one in particular, from Epictetus, lands like a blow. As you kiss your child goodnight, whisper to yourself that the child may be dead by morning. It sounds morbid, Marcus admits, but it is only naming a natural thing the way we speak of grain being reaped. To love something while holding it loosely, fully aware it can be taken, is not to love it less. It is to stop being destroyed when nature takes it back. He even watches the grapes. Unripe, then ripe, then dried to raisins, nothing lost at any stage, only changed. Nothing is ever simply gone, he writes. It has only moved on to its next form. Book 12. Leaving the Stage. Everything you are chasing the long way round, Marcus writes, you could have right now, this very moment, if you would only stop getting in your own way. Let go of the past, hand the future to Providence, and steer just the present toward reverence and justice. That is the whole of it, set down near the end of a life. Accept what you are given, tell the truth, treat people as they deserve, and stop waiting to begin. He draws the final accounting of what a person actually is. You are three things, he says: body, breath, and mind. Two of them are only yours on loan. To the third alone do you hold clear title. So cut the mind free of what others do and say, free of what you yourself have done, free of the future you dread and the body that drags at you, and let it stand clear, doing what is right and accepting what comes. Practice even what looks impossible, he urges. The left hand is clumsy at almost everything, and yet from sheer practice it holds the reins better than the right. Be the boxer, he says, not the swordsman. The swordsman picks up his weapon and lays it down, but the boxer's hands are part of him, always ready, and all he has to do is clench a fist. Salvation, he writes, is no grand mystery. See each thing for exactly what it is, do only what is right, say only what is true, and pay out your goodness link by link, like a chain with no gap in it. If a thing is not right, do not do it. If a word is not true, do not say it. He notices, with something close to wonder, how strangely we are built. We love ourselves more than anyone else, and yet we trust other people's opinion of us more than our own. He keeps the images plain and final. The lamp gives its light until the moment it is put out, never dimming on the way. So he asks himself why your truth and your justice should ever gutter out before the end. When someone seems to have wronged you, remember that he has already sentenced himself by becoming the kind of man who does such things, and that expecting a bad man to do no harm is like expecting fig trees to give no juice, or babies not to cry. And then, at the very close of the book, and of the meditations as a whole, he writes the passage that has outlived empires. You have lived as a citizen in a great city. Whether you were here 5 years or 100 makes no difference. The laws are the same for everyone. And to be sent out of that city again, not by a tyrant and not by an unjust judge, but by the same nature that first led you in, is nothing to be afraid of. It is like an impresario dismissing an actor from the stage. But I have only played 3 acts, the actor protests. Yes, Marcus answers, but in a life, 3 acts can be the whole play. The one who wrote your beginning has written your ending, and neither was ever yours to decide. So take your leave gracefully. The power that dismisses you is satisfied. Be satisfied too.